Thanks for that. So portfolio strategies for international universities is tonight's topic. And just to welcome everybody, I just want to tell those of you who are not familiar with admittance education, which I think a lot of you are, I'm just seeing your names here. So we are on Instagram at Admittance Education. We're a college counseling group where there's 7 of us in the group working out of various countries in the world, and now with offices in Turkey, in Taksim. So, and we're working with quite a few of you here, and that's all I'll say. So you can go to Instagram and find out more about who we are. And with that, I actually want to just turn it over to Brandy, because if she could share her slides, will that work?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go ahead and bring up my PowerPoint. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for being here. I know it's nighttime where you are, so thank you for spending your evening with me. I'm going to just go ahead and introduce myself. So I am Brandy Fransen, and this is a little bit of my background. So I was born in a third world country. I was born and raised in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. So that makes me a third culture kid. My parents, my mother is American, my dad's Honduran, so I kind of grew up in 2 cultures. And then I came to the United States and I attended the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I have a graphic design degree from them. And I was a graphic designer for quite a few years, about 5 years, until I decided I was looking for a change. I wanted to travel a lot. And so I applied for a position at my alma mater as a recruiter. So I started traveling the world, and thanks to them, I got to see 82 countries. So it was a great position, and I was there for 12 years. And when I left, I was their director of international recruitment. And I would also present with other institutions like Pratt and RISD and Ringling, and we would talk about the portfolio requirements and what the committees actually are looking for. Sorry, if you see my cat run across the screen. And then after being there for 12 years, I really felt like I needed to change. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., where I was the director of operations at Linden Educational Services. And I would travel with other representatives from universities. I would lead a group of the universities to different parts of the world for like college fairs. So if you've ever been to one of those college fairs where a bunch of universities show up at your high school, that would have been kind of like what I was doing. And now I work at Rollins College, and the difference between Rollins College and Savannah College of Art and Design is that Savannah College of Art and Design is a specialty school, so they have very specific programs, and Rollins is a liberal arts institution. And so I'm going to talk about the differences between those two and how art can be applied, or your portfolio can be used to apply to both of those. And I also do portfolio counseling on the side. So if a student is interested in applying to art school or even to a liberal arts college, and they want their portfolio to be a supplemental part of the application, I also help students with that as well. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip. Hold on one second. So we're going to talk briefly about creating a dynamic portfolio. So a lot of people will ask, what is a portfolio? Because it means different things to different people. So it's basically a collection of your best work. And it can be a variety of different things. It can demonstrate your ideas. It can demonstrate how you think, how you want to solve problems, and obviously your skill level. So those are really the things that a portfolio is. Now, there are different types of portfolios, and these are the different types. So depending on what you're applying to, which program you're applying to, you can submit a music audition, you can submit a video of yourself playing a sport. If you are an actor, you can submit a theater audition. And obviously, if you're looking to study art and design, it would be an artistic portfolio. So those all count as different types of portfolios. These are some of the majors that might require it. Now, this is by no means a full list. This is just some of the majors that would require a portfolio. And so studio and fine art, obviously it would include painting and drawing and observational drawing. Film and television is usually short films. Performing arts, I already mentioned, is like a film of you acting. And architecture and interior design, this is a tricky one because high school students are not necessarily expected to know that much about the programs like AutoCAD or things like that. But I usually help students with architecture and interior design talk about spatial perception, 3-point perspective, and those sort of things. Photography and fashion. So these are all very different types of portfolios, but they would all fall under the same talent-based work. Okay, so this photo here is actually a photo of Rollins. This is where I work. But there's also, and this is a liberal arts institution. So at a liberal arts institution or at a hybrid model, like a dual degree program, for example, RISD has a dual degree program with Brown. So you can actually be applying to both at the same time, and you can take classes in both universities. You would submit a portfolio, for example, at Rollins as like a supplemental piece, or there's a whole bunch of universities that are liberal arts colleges that look at it just as another facet of who you are. So it doesn't necessarily make or break the decision, but it's more information that will be used when they're in the admission committee and they're trying to decide between you and another student, and they see that you're super well-rounded and that you have these other facets to your personality, and it's not just academics. Now, if you're applying to art school, that is going to be a major factor. So your portfolio will definitely be taken into consideration when it comes to making the admission decision. So that's probably the biggest difference between the two when it comes to the portfolio. At a liberal arts college, you most likely won't get a BFA. It depends. It really does depend, because that's a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Most likely you'll get a Bachelor of Arts in like studio art or something like that. So really the art schools are more focused on the BFA, and then the liberal arts colleges are more focused on the BA, but that is not the case always. Like it definitely does vary from place to place. Okay, so I've sat in on many admission committees and where we've been talking about portfolios, we've been talking about the student, and we really do use it as a way to figure out if the student will fit into our university. If we look at the work and we are familiar, like the faculty looks at the work and they say, oh yeah, this student will succeed here, they'll be fine. Or you might be applying to a university that doesn't require an art portfolio, and they look at it and they go, oh my gosh, this is great. Look at all of these other areas the student is talented in. We really feel like they would be an asset to the classroom. They also look at it and say, oh, this student is fantastic. Maybe we should give them a scholarship so that they will choose us over another institution. So that's another way that you can be using your portfolio to leverage merit-based scholarships. And again, not all colleges require a portfolio. So just make sure that when you're doing your research that you look into the particulars, because not every portfolio is the same. Some of them will require 10 pieces, some of them will require 20 pieces, some of them will require 8 pieces. So it will definitely vary from place to place. Now, when you're looking between Europe and the USA, and you're applying to schools in both of those areas, of both of those regions, it's very different the way that they use the portfolio. So in the US, we really want to see how students think and how they problem solve and the theme of their work. So the descriptions of each piece have to be crafted in such a way that you really talk about how all your work is tied together through this sort of conceptual awareness, this theme. And it's meant to tell like a narrative, like a visual story of you and who you are, the problems that you want to solve, the things that you're passionate about. And not all universities will ask you for it, but sometimes they will ask you for process work. They may say, please submit a few pages from your sketchbook. Okay. So definitely while you're working on your pieces, make sure that you keep a log or a journal or a sketchbook of all the process work, all the research that you've done, because that will help you also when you're writing your descriptions, especially for the US, because the US will ask you for descriptions of each piece. In Europe, they're not as concerned with that. In Europe, they're just concerned with the work. They just want to see your portfolio pieces. They don't care about the description that much. They just want to see the talent. And so access, I've actually had a really hard time, like on some of the websites in Europe, the art schools specifically, where it doesn't really talk very much about like, how do I submit this portfolio? Who do I send it to? What are the requirements? How many pieces do I need to put in? That information is really hard to find on some of the European websites. So unfortunately, the only way to find that information out is to speak with a representative from that university once you've applied, because that's really the best way. I don't know, Yassine might be able to help you too, because she probably is very well connected. And then SlideRoom is the platform that US universities use for you to upload your portfolio. So it's a separate website. You have to pay $10 usually to access it, and then you upload your work through there. So it's very easy. You can write the descriptions in there, and it's very easy to organize. Okay, so when to submit a portfolio? Most universities have some sort of deadline, and you'll have to do research on what that deadline is. There's also something called rolling admission. So rolling admission means that they take and accept students throughout the year, so you can apply anytime throughout the year. And they just expect you to submit your portfolio along with your completed application. My recommendation is if you're submitting a portfolio to a university that has a deadline, make sure that you get it in early because the funds sometimes run out, and the funds for academic scholarships or merit-based scholarships are sort of on a first come, first served basis. So you definitely want to get your work in early so that the faculty or the admission office can review your work early. And by early, I mean like usually around this time. So August is a little bit too early, but September, October is a good time. Okay, just a couple of tips. So like I said before, you want to think of your portfolio as like a visual interview. So if you're not sitting in the room with them actually interviewing, this is the best way for them to get to know who you are. Every artist is different. So there's not a formula. There's not like a one way to make this work. Every single one of these portfolios is individual and unique. And it's meant to reflect who you are, not who someone else is. Trust me, if you submit someone else's work, they will be able to tell when you get there, because the faculty will come back to the admission office and say, why did you admit this kid? They don't know what they're doing. And they're going to go back to the portfolio that you submitted, and they're going to be like, look at this. So if you submit someone else's work, we'll figure it out eventually. So make sure that it is true to you and who you are. You want to definitely get feedback as often as you can. So if you have anyone in your life that is an artist, or if you have someone like a portfolio counselor or even an art teacher, I would recommend that you go to them as often as possible to get feedback. And like I said before, you definitely want to document all of your work. So write about your work, write about the research, what inspired the work, all of those sort of things. So these are the questions that you really need to answer when you're putting together your portfolio. What stories do you want to tell? So when you're creating your work, each piece has a message. Each piece has some kind of impression that it's going to leave on the viewer. So what is the story that you want your work to tell? What do you want to make your work about? Maybe you're passionate about social justice. Maybe you're passionate about women's rights. Maybe you're passionate about identity. Maybe you're passionate about culture. Maybe you're passionate about water. Like I've done a whole series of work with a student about water. Or one student I had, his mom was losing her hair, and he did this whole portfolio based around alopecia. So it can be super intimate. It doesn't have to be like this generic thing. It can be very, very intimate, and it can be very vulnerable. And that's actually good because we get to learn more about you that way. And it captures our attention because it's not like anyone else's work. Push the ideas that you're working with, challenge yourself, always get uncomfortable. I always like to tell people that make sure that you're doing things that make you brave, make you feel courageous. It's totally okay. If you mess up the first time, that's all right. It's kind of like when you turn on a garden hose that hasn't been turned on in a very long time. At first, what comes out is like dirty and ugly. And then as you let it run more and it starts to flow more, it gets better and it gets clearer. So that's the same way that artwork is. So the more you practice, the better you're going to get, basically. Universities are very much interested in how you think. I don't know if you think about, from our perspective, we can teach anyone to be a better artist. We can teach everyone how to be a better, drawer, or we can teach them skills, but we can't teach them how to have better ideas. So the ideas that you bring to the table is really what we want to see. And we want to see how you work and how you think. So make sure that you take those creative risks when you're putting together your portfolio. Okay, so what should you put in? I get this question all the time. Please make sure you use original work. Don't copy someone else's work. Most of these schools will recognize it if you copy someone else's work because they're very much immersed in the art world. So make sure that you include work that is your own. So you can draw people, you can draw objects. That's called observational drawing and figure drawing. You can experiment with a variety of different kinds of media. So that means you can use graphite pencil, you can use chalk pastel, you can do painting, you can do collaging. So there's so many different things that you could, print making. I mean, there's just so many ways that you could include in your portfolio. And if you're doing a written portfolio, obviously you want to include things like poetry and short stories and critiques. This is really important. So quality over quantity. Please edit your work. And I know that it's easy to be emotionally connected to your work. So we think that I spent 40 hours on this piece. I obviously have to put it in my portfolio. But the reality is that you need to go to someone that has a more objective opinion and have them look over your work. And they might choose the pieces that you only spent 3 hours working on versus the one that you spent 40 hours working on. And that's just because they are not emotionally attached and they may be able to see something that you don't see. So make sure that you edit and that you choose quality over quantity. The biggest mistake that students make when they're putting together a portfolio is, I'm going to throw everything in and just hope something good happens. That's the worst idea, because we're actually evaluating you on how well you edited your portfolio. You want to think of it like a GPA. So if you have a lot of A's in your GPA, and if you want to think of each piece as an A, and if you throw in a C piece or a D piece, it's going to bring down your whole portfolio GPA. So don't throw things in just to like fluff it up. Make sure that you think about every piece that you put in and why you're putting it in. Obviously, it's better if you have a lot to choose from. So don't wait till the last minute. This is a very common problem with artists, is that we work well under pressure. So we wait until the last minute because we procrastinate all the way till the end. I'm talking about me too. So but that's bad, because what happens is then you don't have a lot of work to choose from, and then you're having to create at the last minute, and that work doesn't always come out really well. So it's better if you have a lot of work to choose from. Okay, chronology matters. So the way in which you put together your portfolio and tailor it will be very important. So you want to start with your strongest piece first. Human beings remember the first thing that they see and the last thing that they see normally. So everything in the middle is going to kind of have to be as strong as those two, but the first one is the first impression, and the last one is the ending impression. You want to think of it kind of like bookends. So start strong and end strong. If you have a series of work, like if you have a collection like a diptych or a triptych of work, those should all be on one slide. So they're not going to count for 3 separate pieces, okay? So make sure that you think of it like a visual GPA. And I already talked to you a little bit about SlideRoom, but that's the website. So if you ever want to check it out, it's slideroom.com. If you're writing, this is actually something that I come in contact with, like students that want to be script writers for movies, or contemporary writers for movies. There's a few schools, like Chapman University as an example has an incredible program. So you definitely want to reinforce your portfolio, and you want to gather as much information as possible. So if you've done any honors or awards, make sure that you include that in your application. If you've written articles, make sure you include that in your application. And the statement of purpose is something that you're going to have to submit as part of your application anyway. So there's a lot of writing. Basically, that's my little summary. There's a lot of writing. And the statement of purpose is or the art statement, excuse me, is a little bit different than the statement of purpose. The art statement, which might be asked of you, some universities ask for it, some universities don't. It's basically like when you walk into an art gallery and you see that little plaque at the beginning of the show, and it tells you all about the work, and it tells you why the artist created all the pieces that you're about to see. That's an art statement. So you want to tell the viewer, you want to basically show them, like, this is why I made this. This is what ties everything together. This is my background. This is why it's important to me. So that is what an art statement really is about. It's the how, what, and why did you make this work. Beware of the sentence, I always knew I wanted to be an artist ever since. That's the worst way to start an art statement. We really prefer something a little bit more dynamic than generic. And obviously make sure you ask someone to proofread. I highly recommend that. So that's the end of my presentation. These are my 2 email addresses, and one of them, you can contact me through either one, but I will be happy to help with any questions. And I'm going to stay till the end of this presentation to answer questions if you have any. Thank you.
Well, love it when I'm on mute and I'm talking. I said thank you for this piece. It's wonderful, and I know Setenay is going to follow up in Turkish with some, very different content. But I just want to highlight for the audience what a privilege it is to have someone with such extensive background from the perspective of someone who's going to actually evaluate your work, right? So we're very lucky, guys. Just wanted to make sure you all realize that. Okay. With that, I will turn it over to Setenay Alpsoy, who is a practicing artist and in Istanbul, and she works with some students. And she's going to deliver her piece in Türkçe. Okay.
Evet. Merhaba herkese. Ben de kısacık giriş yapayım. Mimar Sinan Güzel Sanatlar Üniversitesi Resim Bölümünden mezun oldum. 2001 yılında, ardından yüksek lisans aynı okulda kent peyzajı üzerine ve ondan beridir de kişisel olarak sanat hayatıma devam ediyorum. Evin Sanat Galerisi'yle ve portfolyo derslerine bir kurumsal yurt dışı danışmanlık firmasında başlayıp kendi atölyemde bugün devam ettiriyorum. O da 12 sene kadar oldu yapalı. Şimdi zaten teşekkürler, çok detaylı olarak İngilizce bize anlattı Brandy. Fakat tabii Türkiye'de gördüğünüz gibi ben de bazı şeyler not almıştım. Bunları görüyorsunuz. Eğitim sistemimiz sınav odaklı, ezber odaklı ve güzel sanatlara yeri olmayan bir eğitim sistemi olduğu için evet, kağıt üzerinde anlatması güzel, uygulamada zor şeyler bunlar Türkiye'de, Türkiye özelinde. Dolayısıyla evet, üstüne söyleyebileceğim şunlar var. Evet, sanatsal becerilerinizi en iyi düşündüğünüz parçalarınızı koyduğunuz bir sunum dosyasıdır portfolyo, en basit tanımıyla. Bu sizin istediğiniz bölüme göre değişir. Moda istiyorsanız, mimarlık istiyorsanız, hangi ülkeyi, hangi okulu, hatta yani o ülkeler içerisinde de tavır ve tarz farklılıkları var. Dolayısıyla hangi okulda istiyorsanız ona göre şekil alan bir dosyadır. Sketchbook'u ben de tabii ki çok önemsiyorum. Özellikle İngiltere ve Amerika için. Evet, dediği gibi süreci gösterir. Aslında hep merak ettikleri şey süreçtir. Sizden kesinlikle çok iyi çizmenizi beklemezler. Sadece evet, söylediği gibi nasıl çözdüğünüzü, neyin peşinde olduğunuzu, tutkularınızın ne olduğu, hatta yani o sizin tutkularınızla olan ilişkinizi ve onlarla nasıl üretim yaptığınızın peşindeler. Benim deneyimlerimden anlatacağım. Pek bu metne bağlı kalmadım ben ama nasıl olsa okuyabiliyorsunuz hani. Sonrasında belki de portfolyo için bunu söyledikten sonra diğer sayfaya geçtiğimizde nasıl başlarız konusu var. Burada ben dediğim gibi genel olarak çok nadirdir hani çizerek kendini anlatan, çizme yeteneği demeyelim de hani çizme pratiği olan öğrencilerle karşılaştığım çok nadirdir. Genel olarak dediğim gibi eğitimde bu yer almadığı için genellikle ben bir şey çizemem ki diye gelirler. O da hiç sorun değil. Zaten dediğim gibi çok mükemmel bir çizim aramıyorlar. Burada biz daha çok demin bahsettiğim gibi listeyi oluşturuyoruz. O okulların tarzlarına bakıyoruz, gereksinimlerine bakıyoruz ve burada şeylere başlıyoruz. Minik minik aslında konu arayışlarına başlıyoruz. Burada benim değineceğim şey, o da bahsetti. Fakat bir şey gibi olursa, bir birliği olursa, bir başlığı olursa, mümkün olur da, vakit olur da yapabilirsek, onun etrafında dönen işler olursa izlemesi ve derdimizi anlatması daha kolay oluyor. Daha profesyonel gözüküyor bence. Ve aslında üstüne çalışması da daha kolay oluyor. Evet, dediği gibi işinizin üstünde konuşmaya hazır olun. Bunu biz defalarca zaten atölyede yapıyoruz. Şunu şu yüzden yaptık, bunu bu yüzden yaptık, sonra buna baktık falan diye. Bunları yapıyoruz çünkü sizin savunmanız gerekiyor. Çok seviyorlar üstüne yazılabilmesini, üstüne anlatılabilmesini. Dolayısıyla sadece bir görselden ibaret olmuyor. Sonraki slaytta da yaklaşım, evet, demin bahsettiğim gibi tematik olması, tematik olamıyorsa, yani bir konu seçemiyorsak da en azından aynı kişinin elinden çıkan işler olduğu anlaşılması çok önemli. Yani bu ne demek? Bu kişi bir çizim de yapsa, bir kolaj da yapsa, bir video da çekse, bir palet birliği olabilir, bir işte yaklaşım birliği olabilir, bir kadraj birliği olabilir. Yani aynı kişinin işi olarak hissedilmesi lazım karşı taraftan. Bu önemli. Ve dediği gibi elemeler yapabilmek önemli. Başka burada ileteceğim. Evet, devam edebiliriz. Evet, ne kadar zaman ayırmalı? Bu dediğim gibi 10. sınıf en ideali. Neden derseniz işte bu bütün olmayan, daha önce verilmemiş olan o temel sanat eğitimi, her bölüm için geçerli olan o kadrajdır, en temel çizimdir, açık koyu çalışmalarıdır. Buna her zaman ihtiyaçları var, bu bilgilere. Bunların verilmesi için dediğim gibi bölümle ilgili yaklaşımın, mesela mimarlık istiyor öğrenci. Fakat hiçbir şekilde bir mimarın hani o aşama aşama o işi geliştirme sürecinden haberi yok. Onların az çok bilinmesi için, sonrasında bu SAT sınavlarının, işte tatillerin, başka yapılacak bir sürü işi oluyor bu 11. sınıfta, 10. sınıfta çocukların. Dolayısıyla onların böldüğü zaman dilimlerinde düşünürsek 10. sınıf bence en ideali. İşte ben genelde atölyemde 5 saatlik yani bir birebir ders veriyorum. Hani onu uygun görüyorum. Ama hani bazıları var ki bütün gün açık atölyeler, çocuklar gidiyor. Hani orada zaman zaman hocalar hani müdahale ediyor işlere. O biraz şey meselesi, yani hani kişinin ihtiyacına göre, tarzına göre, nasıl rahat ediyorsa öğrencinin ihtiyaçlarına göre belirleniyor. Sonrasında benimki bu kadar.
Sonra da evet, question and answer. Hakikaten bir tek bir şey dokunmak istiyorum. Setenay Hoca'nın söylediği gibi o kadar çok istek var ki üniversite başvuru sürecinde bir öğrencinin üstünde o kadar çok yaptırım oluyor ki hakikaten onun dediği gibi süreç bölünüyor. Onun için ne olur 10. sınıfta başlayın dediği aslında demekte çok haklı. With that, I'll transition to English and see if there are any questions. And I might actually like stop sharing so we can see your faces. Will that be okay? Yes? Is anybody brave here? There's got to be some of you with questions. I know Sinan should have a question. If he's still here. Oh yeah, I see a hand. So please just take yourself off mute and just talk.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good job.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's great. First of all, thank you for your amazing presentations. I want to ask, I'm also interested in visual arts, but primarily I'm planning to apply for music schools. So I'm working on a musical portfolio. Do you have any sort of since the visual portfolio and the music portfolio? But do you have some students or anything you have to share about music portfolios at all?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. So if you're applying to the music program at different institutions and you're an international student, most likely what they're going to ask you for is a virtual audition. So you're going to have to set up a time with the specific faculty, right? So they're usually very kind and they tell you these are the pieces that we want you to play for us. It's not, and then they might say, one piece is you can do whatever you want, have fun with it, whatever, but they will have some specific music pieces that they'll ask you to play. And if they don't do it virtual live, then they'll ask you to record yourself playing, a video of you playing, and then you can just send it directly to the faculty. One thing that's important for you to know is that programmatic things like that, it's called a programmatic scholarship. So a music department might have funds of their own and they might say, oh, we really want Sinan. We really, really want him. So we're going to offer him a scholarship from our budget, and then admission can offer you a scholarship from their budget, and it can be combined. So that is one way for you to be able, and you know what, the more involved you are, the better. So if you're, and be persistent. I know that's not always culturally In the US, it's okay, but not always in other cultures is it okay to be persistent. But it's okay to be persistent here. So if you email the faculty and you say, I'm really interested, I'm applying, how do I send you my audition? Please tell me. And sometimes the information, it might be on the website, but not always. You can absolutely send them that email and do it more than once. If they don't respond, send it again. Like, it's okay.
That's excellent. Good question. Thank you, Sinan. How about anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Me, Yasmin. Okay. Hi, I'm Yasmin. Thank you so much, Brandy and Setenay, for those very, insightful presentations. So I want to apply for film school, and I was wondering, should we strive for having a variety of, pieces in our portfolio, or as Setenay mentioned, should we, kind of give more importance to a strong sense of unity, and a demonstrable personal style?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're applying for film, most likely there's going to be schools that ask you for 2 to 3 minute shorts, 3 to 5 minute films, and 5 to 10 minute films. So my recommendation is that you should have at least maybe a few, maybe like 2 minute shorts, and then have a bigger film that's maybe 5 to 7 minutes that you can then edit down to like 3 to 5 minutes, so that you're not creating new work every single time and having to get new actors and writing new scripts and all that stuff. If you have enough time between now and the deadline, I'm working right now with a student in Brazil, and he has until next fall. So he's applying, 2023. And right now we're writing scripts together on like 2 minute shorts, 3 minute shorts. So he's going to have maybe 2 or 3 of those. Then we move on to the 5 minute one. And then we're going to move on to like the 7 to 10 minute one, right? So depending on what your resources are, depending on how much time you have, how many actors are willing to be, and the other thing, like for example, Chapman University, that's like one of the top 10 film programs in the United States. They ask for a 2 minute film with no words. No words. So you have to get the idea across with just actions. And it's hard. It's hard. My recommendation for you though is if you Google, this is hard because sometimes people compare themselves, but I'm not doing it for you to feel disillusioned or disappointed. I want you to be inspired. When you Google like Chapman University video or accepted Chapman film, or what, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes up that students have posted basically saying like, hey guys, I got in and this was my film. You can get in too, like do something like this. So it helps you to get a sense of what different universities are accepting and who got in and why they got in. So you kind of have to have like a couple of things in your pocket: 2 minute shorts, 5 minute shorts, and then a longer one.
Yeah, I went through that disillusionment phase last year, so I got that out of the way. Now I'm
Yay!
just looking ahead right now. Just okay, I'm my own self, and I have to, just try at least. So more specific about film, again, a follow-up question is: are they going to judge us based on one short? Like, is there any way to kind of? So do we have to like give one single like good piece, or can we also like create a bunch of smaller pieces together that's kind of like helping our main submission? Because like I'm not just a film person, like I don't know, I make music, I draw, do animation, like those kinds of things. So is there any way to incorporate those things, or do I have to just stick with a really solid narrative, like very good storytelling short?
There's a couple things. One, you can kind of sneak things by. So in your application, you can put like sometimes it says additional notes or additional information. You can put a link in to your animation, for example. right? Or if you've ever heard of Zeemee, some universities look at Zeemee videos. It's Zeemee.
Mhm.
And Zeemee is a way for you actually film yourself and you introduce yourself and you basically say like, this is me, this is what I am, what I'm passionate about. I play music, I do animation, I do this, that, and the other. And they will look at that because Zeemee is used by a lot of universities. Most film schools won't just ask for one film. I'm not going to say all, but most don't. Most want to see a range. So most will say, give me your 2-minute short and then give me your, or they might say, give me a demo reel that has shorts from a few different films, like a demo reel of different things that you've done. And so you have to kind of like give like little clips of everything. So if you're applying for next year, my recommendation is like do research now on what all the different requirements are because they're all going to be different. They're all going to be different. There's not like one size fits all, unfortunately. And then that way you know what you're up against. You know what you have to create between now and then.
So you brought up a very interesting point. I realized a couple years ago normally with students we prefer to, like, people like me prefer to wait till you've got all your exam results and GPAs and IB results to produce a college list or work with the student on one. But with art students, I think it's a great idea to do it like at least 1 year in advance. So your portfolio teacher and you know exactly what you need to do. So just want to say that. And you can change that list, but at least you have a good idea.
Yeah, at least get your top ones on the list early.
Yep. Got great questions. Is there another one, guys? I know it's late for everybody, but I know there are lots of you who are applying with portfolio. I know some of you, not all.
I have a question. Can
Please,
I
yeah,
ask?
go ahead.
Actually, I have two questions. They're a bit unrelated, but first of all, you mentioned that 10th grade was the best time to start developing a portfolio, I think. Well, I'm an 11th grader, but I do have some skill set and some ideas with me. But what would your advice be for me to, catch up with that, kind of lost time and prepare a good portfolio, for example, applying for architecture school?
So I'm not sure if you're able to do anything this summer, but there's a lot of summer programs for 11th graders. Not all of them are in person. Some of them are. Some of them are 2 weeks. Some of them are 5 weeks. For example, SCAD has the 5-week Rising Star program. They also have like 1-week programs. So it depends on what you have available. Now, because of COVID last year, they had many universities, art universities, started offering like summer programs online. But I think that this year, a lot of them are going to be in person. And I know that it's costly, but it just depends. Like some of them are really expensive and some of them aren't. And if you have a family member or a friend that lives in the US and you can say, hey, I'm coming and I'm staying on their campus for a week and then I want to hang out with you, you can do different things. If you don't have access to a summer program, then my recommendation would be to start looking at the examples on their website. So a lot of universities have examples of portfolios that got accepted. This is what like Yasmin was talking about. She's like, I went through this whole disillusionment last year. Don't let it disillusion you. Just look at it and be like, okay, this is the caliber of work that I need to create in order to get in. So it's really just to give you like a bar of what you're trying to achieve. And most art schools have like examples. Now, don't confuse it with work that is from students that's already there. Like if a student is already at that university and they're just demonstrating that on their website, that's going to scare the crap out of you. Don't do that. Don't, because they already are there and they're already being taught, and that's a totally different, you're not expected to know what you don't know. So they know you're coming from 11th grade. They know you're a high school student. they know that you have limited resources in terms of like programs and faculty and things like that. So they're not expecting you to do magic. They just want you to do whatever your best work is, and just work really hard at it, right?
Cool. Did you have another
Thanks so
question,
much.
I see, or?
Yes, I have another question. This is more major specific, I think, but so my current art style, my artworks are like focused in illustration style or cartoon style. But I decided to study architecture, and do you think I can use these skill sets to develop a more architecture specific portfolio, or can I just merge those two concepts, or is it too different? Like, yeah, for
They are different, but that's not impossible. One thing I will say, and I didn't mention this during my presentation, is anime. Please do not submit anime. We hate it. Like art schools hate it. We hate it because most of the time it's not your work. Most of the time, even if the characters are yours, they're based off of somebody else's character, and it's very unilateral. It doesn't allow for us to see anything else. Like if it's basically making it seem like, oh, you're an anime kid, like that's it, that's all you have. So I rarely recommend including it in a portfolio, and it's not just because I don't like it, it's because most art schools hate it. If you're interested in both architecture and illustration, and you have developed your own characters, that you can do it in a way that you do 3 architecture pieces, 3 character pieces, and 3 something else. So you can do it in like sections, if you want to think of it like that. And for architecture, it's going to be a little bit hard if you don't have access to someone that's already an architect, but you can do, like I said, 3-point perspective. You can sit and draw architecture. So like if you want to, there's beautiful architecture in Turkey, lots of things to draw in Turkey. So if you want to just sit and draw it and make sure you get the perspective correctly, illustrate it in such a way that it's beautiful, then they'll at least get to see your different techniques. Because they're looking for how you do mark making. They're looking for how well you understand spatial perception, things like that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you. And honest talk. I think Burcu has a question. I see her hand.
I had another question, but just to complete this last conversation. So do you mean that having a local touch will mean a lot to the schools? So like having a Turkish architecture rather than a general Rome, France, Italy one?
So my recommendation is that you draw from observation in life. So not from a photograph. We prefer it from life. So if you have beautiful architecture, which I know you do because I've been to Turkey, we would rather that. We would rather that you draw something from observing it in person, not through a photo, not something that's 2-dimensional like a photo.
Okay. What about internships? Besides portfolio, how is CV is important for the art schools? Having internships or your other career experiences, activities, sport, etc.
So all of those things are important. For example, if you apply to Stanford, like that's an Ivy school, they will ask you for what's called an art resume. And on your art resume, you can include things like I interned at certain place. I've even had students include like I went to this museum and I saw this exhibit. Because it's basically showing them like how are you involved in the arts in your own community, right? So what's available to you there? And how involved are you? Not all students have access to internships, but if you can get one, great. It's always great. It's always good to have that on your resume. It's not a make or break situation, but if you can get that exposure, that would be awesome.
Can I piggyback on that? And I want to see if Brandy agrees with me, because this is an open discussion, right? But I've heard so many times school administrators in Turkey say things like, hey, get your folders together. This is literally the term, the folders together with your certificates in your folders. Listen, you don't want to be spread all over the board. You don't want to just do like tennis and then feed the cats and then do you need to somehow coordinate everything you're doing, because they're looking for people who are exhibiting like intellectual rigor in their intended field of study. So if you're going to do like a social responsibility project, it's important that you have one. Try to see if you can like somehow relate it to your field. Don't do something completely unrelated. Okay.
Right.
So
that's why I was talking about like an arts resume is specific to arts, right? So if like I had a student that she did an internship at an interior design company.
Perfect.
Then she did, she worked with Habitat for Humanity, so that's service.
Perfect.
And then she also helped students at an art camp. So like all those things are kind of related, but and then she also put like what exhibits she went to and which museums she visited. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, but it should have at least like one common thread that kind of ties it all together.
That not too long ago, I remember working on an essay with a student for Cambridge, and he insisted on making it all about Notre Dame. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're Turkish. Are you interested in your surroundings? And then he changed it. And guess what? He did get in,
Yeah,
so,
because they don't want to know about Notre Dame. They want to know about like, tell us about you. Yeah.
Right. Some Byzantine architecture or Ottoman architecture or whatever it is that you fancy and research. Other questions? These are excellent. We got excellent questions. Thank you.
We do.
Other questions? No, we have everybody else's.
I have one.
Yeah,
I have
please.
a bit of more specific question that maybe applies to some other people as well. So basically, I was born in the States and I lived there until I was like 9, 10 years old. And then I moved to Turkey, and both of my parents are Turkish, and we've been living here ever since. When I apply for these art schools or these film schools, will they consider me like an American student applying, or is it more of like a foreign? Am I going to be in the foreign student applicant pool? Like, how does that, unwind?
So you're considered a U.S. abroad student, is what we call you. A U.S. abroad student, and unfortunately, every school will do it differently. Most universities will put you in with the other international students because you go to school in a foreign country. And so the international readers like me would be reading your application, and you would have access to federal financial aid and things like that because you're a US citizen. Rarely have I seen, it still happens, but honestly, I don't respect universities that do this. If they put you in the domestic bin, it's going to be so hard because the person who reads your application will not be familiar with the educational system. They won't be able to recalculate your grade point average and things like that. Usually that happens at really big schools, like public schools and state schools, because they get like 10,000 applications a year and they don't have the faculty or they don't have the staff to be able to be recalculating your GPA or things like that. So it will depend. It will depend. But for the most part, you will be put in for admission. You'll be considered a US abroad student. You will also be invited to like international student orientation because you're coming from another country. So, and I highly encourage you to participate in that because the culture shock is real. I mean, I had both as well. I had US passport and a Honduran passport. I had never lived in the US, not even as a kid. And then I came to the US for college, and I was like, this is hard. Like I didn't know how to assimilate. So the orientation really helped me a lot.
I know we're really short on time, and let's take one last one. This looks like an easy one. Elif Ceren says she wrote it. She's applying for architecture, and she has done a project for sustainability in fashion. Will that be helpful? What do you guys think? I think it might be if there's elements of sustainability in her theme for architecture. What do you think?
Yeah,
Brandy?
I think the theme of the portfolio needs to be sustainability.
Yeah.
And so you can use different forms to support that. So you can use fashion, you can use architecture, but you need to talk about or write about that the main thread or the concentration is sustainability.
And if you do, then you can parlay your project. If not,
Right.
perhaps
Right. And
it just sits there.
I see that ESIC wrote what other requirements for an application to an art school. Yeah, they look at all those things.
Yeah.
If you do AP, they give you college level credit. SAT, most of them are optional, but not always. They
Mhm.
look at letter of recommendation, and they look at your actual application and essay. Yeah.
So thank you. We want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight. And keep in touch. If you've got any questions, send us emails. Like Brandy said, you've also got mine. You can send it to Admittance Education, and we'll try to help you. And hopefully this was really, really useful for people. Daphne, you had a question. Do you want to write it down or speak up real quick? We can try to hit you before we leave. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, I had a really quick question. Basically, I want to apply for arts. I'm in 10th grade, so I didn't prepare my portfolio and everything yet. But I have quite a few things in theater also, and also we're joining competitions and stuff. I don't know if any of that will be useful, so I was wondering if it would be best if I just scrap those or if they will be in any use, because the universities I want to apply to, they're like mostly strictly arts or like some architecture and some design, but not really theater focused.
Okay, that's a good one.
So I will be honest and say that most schools ask you to choose either or. They say either submit a 3-minute demo reel of yourself acting or submit a visual arts portfolio. It is rare that they'll let you submit both, but it's not impossible. So I don't think you should scrap them. I think you should keep everything. And you should list those things on your resume or in your activities, extracurriculars. You can say like, I did all these different acting. I was this actor in this play and this is the role. So, or I did production, or I did lighting, or I did sound, or I did costume. Like all of those things are important because it shows involvement. And it shows that you're a well-rounded artist and not unilateral. So it's not that it's not going to be used, but it may not be that you actually submit a video.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
And
would you
I'll
say-
put these in my CV, right?
What is-
Pardon?
I would put these in my CV.
you would?
Okay.
Yes, that's what she's saying. But would you agree? Maybe don't do a lot more of that if you're not going to do theater. Just kind of focus on your portfolio going forward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. On my arts portfolio. Yes.
Perfect. Well, with that,
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks for asking all the great questions, all of you. This was fun. And Brandy
was.
and
It
Setenay,
is.
I thank you both so much for being here in the our evening, Brandy's morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for letting
Thanks
me be a
all.
part of it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.